Welcome back to BadgerBlitz TV, your Rivals.com destination for all things Wisconsin athletics. I'm Matt Perkins, joined as always by BadgerBlitz.com publisher John McNamara. Happy New Year, John. I know it's a little bit late. It's January 7th, probably a little bit late to say Happy New Year, but it's the first time we've seen each other since the change of the calendar. Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Matt.
So lots happened since last time we were here. Of course, if you have been subscribing to Badger Blitz, you know all about the comings and goings within the transfer portal. It is absolutely nonstop. But the talk of the town right now, obviously, is the changes at position coaches on the offensive side of the ball. Kenny Guiton, I guess you could say, promoted to quarterback coach. I don't know if that's the right phrasing for that, but moves over from the receivers coach. He has experience play calling, and they said they had their guy for a while. If this was their guy, great, but it seems like a curious ending to a long process.
Yeah, I'll touch on that first part. I think that if you're Kenny Guiton, this is an excellent move because it probably gets you a step closer to being an offensive coordinator. Now that you have experience at wide receiver, you're going to get some experience at quarterback now. In general, coordinators usually are linked up with the quarterback position. So I think this is a great move for him. Now, from Wisconsin, I think there's a lot of different ways you can look at it. I think the timing of this would indicate that they were looking at some other options outside of Kenny Guiton because, had he been the guy, I think he would have been announced in a similar time frame to when Grimes was announced. So, that doesn't necessarily make this like it's tough to say, was he the second option or third option? I know some other guys that were in the mix and it didn't work out for one reason or another. The biggest thing that you point to is the lack of experience coaching quarterbacks. Obviously he played quarterback at Ohio State, but there's a difference between playing the position and coaching the position. That being said, I really like the model that Wisconsin has in a offensive coordinator and now a quarterbacks coach. I think that dedicating a guy to coach the quarterbacks is obviously very, very beneficial. It's the most important position, not only in football, but probably all of sports. So I like the model. I don't know. I think we'll have to see what Kenny Guiton does there. I think that the early returns on him have been very good. Seems to be a guy that connects well with the current players, connects well on the recruiting front. So just how he meshes with Jeff Grimes, I think, is kind of remains to be seen. It's a hire that gives you some Paul Chryst vibes, from the stuff that he used to do. But those all came from a point of. I trust this guy. This guy I know will be loyal to, what I want to do and what this program values. And I think, I don't want to put words in Luke Fickell's mouth, but I would imagine he has to think a lot of that with Kenny Guiton as well, because you're putting a lot of trust in him. And he's obviously a guy he's pretty familiar with.
I'm curious how much Guiton then was involved in the portal recruitment process of both Edwards and O'Neill.
I would say Grimes. Yeah, that's a good question, man. I think that, I would imagine Grimes is kind of signing off on most of these things. And I don't think that he'll be totally removed from portal guys if they want to add one more to the room. I think, if the right fit was there, they would like to. And then, recruiting for that 2026 class and beyond, I think that, Grimes might have the final say. Maybe he gets a chance to look at, hey, these are a handful of guys that are realistic for us. And then Kenny Guiton kind of gets turned loose on those guys. But I would imagine, Guiton's involved in the evaluation process. And, it's different than it was from years in the past where, you talk to all these guys and they all mention recruiting staff members, right? Max and Pat and, the guys are involved there. So it's not as much of a one-man show as it used to be under previous recruiting staffs, because obviously it's just structured a little bit differently at Wisconsin. So I think, much more of a team effort than it is just one guy kind of going after specific position groups.
Well, with Guiton vacating the wide receiver position room, Wisconsin brought in Justin Reid from Western Michigan. And I'm curious as to your thoughts here on this hire.
There's not a ton there, not a ton of coaching experience. He was at a few stops before Western Michigan. A young guy, obviously someone that Luke Fickell feels good about, and I'm sure Grimes feels good about. But there's not a whole lot to go off of there. Like I said, just kind of a short stint at Western Michigan, so now he's at Wisconsin. So again, I can't say I love the hire. I don't love the hire. It's kind of this whole offseason is just kind of wait and see with portal guys, with the moves that they've made. I like the idea in general around what Jeff Grimes could do, what Kenny Guiton could do, and with Reid, really for those type of positions, Matt. I think you just need a dynamic recruiting, someone that can come in and recruit really well. There's certain spots on the staff where you want a guy that can come in and recruit. And I don't know, it's tough to say. Did Reid do that at Western Michigan? It's a completely new ball game, right? He's jumping up to a power forward level. So can he go and can compete on the recruiting front? I think that's probably the biggest thing that I look for, but my mind is a little skewed by covering recruiting for the last 20 years. So that's always where I kind of turn.
Well, but then, John, to your point just a minute ago, I don't know, because if the recruiting department is the one that's making these evaluations and the ones who are making the contact with the kids, I would imagine you would want someone who, I don't want to say not necessarily teaches fundamentals, right? But gets these guys to that next level. Once, Pat and Max and that team have identified typically the physical traits. We've talked about this forever, going back with Clint, that, you're oftentimes you're just recruiting these physical traits. And so I would imagine that you would want someone in the position coach room who is going to be able to mold those physical traits to the best possible, and not necessarily have to be the best recruiter. But maybe he's great at both. We don't know. He's just young. And so it's, it'll be interesting to see also. I think Fickell and the staff are looking for better alignment, to use sort of a corporate term. In a lot of ways, we know that there was not necessarily alignment between Coach Longo and Coach Fickell, and this, I think at least in the way they're sort of restructuring this whole thing, it does look like even more top-down CEO, Grimes reports to Fickell, the position coaches report to Grimes. It's much more, because with Longo as both position coach and coordinator, et cetera, like you're talking about.
Yeah. And, not to just kind of open up old wounds, but, that is something that was kind of talked about. I don't know necessarily behind the scenes or reported on, but Longo maybe wasn't the most receptive to feedback and receptive to working with those around him. And that's not meant to be a knock around him, but I think that's just kind of how it was structured. Right. And now you have, like you talked about, Matt, more of a business model of how things are structured. I think, look, this is big business, right? I mean, you can call college football what you want. It's huge, big business. So if you want to model your staff as it sees appropriate to that, I think that that definitely makes sense. So, the one thing with the Reid hire, when we got word about Guiton, and it was just recently, it wasn't like we were kind of sitting on the Guiton news for a while. I kind of got wind of it and got something written up, but I heard Guiton and Reid mentioned in the same sentence, or whoever I was talking to said it. So I mean, those two are kind of like, it wasn't a period of time where, okay, we're going to put Guiton in and then we're going to start this receiver search. I mean, those two seem to be kind of linked together, and Guyton's going to do this, and then we're going to fill him with Reid there. So maybe he was atop that board. Maybe he played a role of like, hey, I really want to get Reid on this staff, and it makes sense to move Guiton there. So I don't want to say just because they moved Reid, they moved Guiton. I don't want to make it seem like that, but I think that maybe he was a guy that Luke Fickell felt pretty strongly about, wanting to get here to Wisconsin, because he kind of seemed like he was connected to the Guiton news, or it all kind of happened in a similar amount of time.
All right, well, let's move from the coaching staff to the transfer portal, which just never freaking stops. I'm so sorry for you, John. I'm so sorry for everyone who covers the transfer portal for a living. I get to the most part, kind of view it from far away and be like, okay, that guy's committed, whatever. I don't have to stay on top of it. I do not envy you whatsoever there. That being said, are the Badgers done in the portal? Are there still more guys they can go after? What are we up to? 19 additions in the portal, something like that, John, right now? for the
Yes,
Badgers?
19 additions. They're not done. I put a pretty interesting name out there just before we hopped on here, Matt. I was a minute late. I'll be honest. I was putting the finishing touches on a message board post. So there's my little plug for the Badgers den. And it's another defensive lineman. It's a name that I think people will recognize. So, they're not done on the defensive line, and they're not done on the edge either. And those are two spots that, if you asked me 4 or 5 days ago, I said I think they're good there. They're going after the kid from Ohio who was on the campus this past weekend, and sounds like they're in a really good spot to land him. So they're adding another potential edge guy to that. One of those jumbo edges, right? Where 6'6", 260. I like the approach. It's just going to be interesting to see once all these guys find out they're all on campus together, these new defensive linemen, these new edge guys, and there's only so many snaps to go around. So I'm curious to see if you see some of these guys not really even unpack their bags, once they get a look at things in spring camp. But it's not a bad problem to have. And if you're Luke Fickell, I got to throw as much talent as I can there and see if something sticks. And I can't be upset if feelings are hurt or, guys don't get the exact amount of time that they envision having. So I like it. They continue to pound portal guys at a position, really that front seven that wasn't good last year. It wasn't really good the year previous, and specifically that defensive line. And that group is entirely new now, with the exception of Ben Barton, who's I was told is coming back for his 6th season. So now with the portal guys, it always comes down with a caveat, and I think that's something that we've learned over the last 2 years. You just don't know. I probably came out with you last year and said John Pius, he's going to be a dude for Wisconsin. I really like the fit of Leon Lowry. Now my approach is let's just see how it plays out, because you could talk yourself into every guy, and now with the way that things are going, you could probably talk yourself out of a lot of guys too. There's a few guys, like a guy like Koziel, the tight end, who I feel confident this guy feels like he's going to be a good upgrade at the position. But the rest, it's tough to say, because we have 2 years of evidence now of getting too high on guys and them just not producing for whatever reason that might be.
Well, John, that was going to lead me to my next question is, who do you think from this portal class, not counting Edwards, the presumed QB1, who gets the most snaps of the other 18 players this year? I would say Koziel. What would be my guess, but I don't know, because I don't know what these defensive line rotations are going to look like.
Right. Is it, I think we're going to see a lot of 3 defensive linemen with that jumbo tight end, that jumbo edge. Could you see 4 true hand in the ground defensive linemen? I don't think that's out of the question. I think they want to be multiple. I think they want to stay flexible, but they have to do something different than the previous 2 years there. Koziel's a pretty safe pick if we're not going quarterback. The cornerback room still has to develop so much, where, right now a guy like Deani Hill, he could be a starter right now, but that room is going to continue to evolve. We don't know what Rico Hallman's going to do. A couple guys that I do like, Mark Hamper, he feels like a guy that could line up opposite Vinny Anthony and eat up a lot of snaps there. That's a room where there's a lot of guys. There just isn't a lot of proven guys right now. You have Vinny, you have Tretch, probably penciled in starters, but I like Hamper. I like his upside, and I like how he kind of complements a guy like Vinny Anthony, who's kind of a burner on that other side. You look like, maybe the guy with the most reps might be Eli Stein, the long snapper. He seems like a pretty safe bet to start.
If that's the case, that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign.
I'm just kidding, man. And here's another guy. I like Parker Peterson a lot, and he's coming as a
dude. Him and Corey Walker are the 2 guys for me that I think are the sort of, it would be at the top of my guesstimate at this point.
Yeah, I think he comes in and is going to eat up a lot of snaps for you. He's 6'4", 300. Can he play that kind of zero technique? Is he better as a 3 or a 5 technique? All those guys, it's going to be interesting to see how that group breaks down. You have these, guys that you're calling these jumbo edges. Will they play standing up? Will they play with their hand in the ground? A guy like Michael Gardner, 6'6", 280. And he's up at the official visit, and he talks to us after. He's like, yeah, they want me to stand up and rush the passer. And I was like, well, I can't wait to see it. I'm really curious to see how everything's going to look. And Mike Tressel, I think, has an idea of what he wants it to do, but I don't want to say that it's going to be so much better or these things are going to be improved, but I like pounding bodies there and just seeing how it's all going to play out. You just hope that, it feels like you're going to have the talent there. You'd like to see the reps distributed a little bit more, not necessarily evenly. Guys don't need even playing time, but I think you're going to have guys there where you can have some rotation of defensive linemen. You can have some rotation of outside linebackers. You can have some situational guys that, let's put them on the field on third down and have them get to the quarterback. So I think you'll have more to play with this year. It's just going to be interesting to see how they allocate those pieces.
Yeah, I'm still curious to see if anything more happens to the cornerback room, like you mentioned, because it still feels thin with the mass exodus that happened at the beginning of the portal season. So I think for me, that's one more position to keep an eye out for. Looking ahead from the portal, junior days are somehow right around the corner, less than 3 weeks away now. No rest for the weary when it comes to recruiting. John, who are some key guys that Wisconsin is going to be trying to get on campus and prioritizing, especially during this first junior day, which is coming up, I think, January 26th?
Yeah, the 26th is going to be the first one for Wisconsin. And then I believe the second one is March 8th, if I'm not mistaken. To start, I'll say that the guys that you've seen sign with Wisconsin in the 2024-25 class, a bulk of them were guys that they were able to get on campus for junior days. So, I think the last 2 years, the junior days were maybe back-to-back weekends in January. Yep. Now they seem to kind of spread that out a little bit. I don't know the reasoning behind that, if it just kind of works better, and if they're just busy from the portal.
It's a logistics thing just to organize that many people in one place for those. I was fortunate enough to go to one of the big national seminars last year, where all of the program ops people are, recruiting ops and stuff like that, and the amount of people you have to get in and out and coordinate for those junior days are excessive, because it's not just the recruits, it's their families and everything like that. And back-to-back weekends is just asking people to work 24/7 for 6 straight weeks to get that set.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff is taking place right away this week because the contact period is here now. And then when I got the dates, I think it makes sense that they're trying to push back the January as much as they can, because they're still really, really active in the portal, and they're still trying to add cornerbacks and add another edge. So it makes sense that they're trying to get back and push it out a little bit further. In terms of guys who could be up here, you start from inside the state. You would expect a guy like Sam Simpson to be up there for that January visit, or if not in March. He's one of 2 guys offered right now. I think he's the more realistic one for a few different reasons. Those spots on the offensive line, they could go quick. Wisconsin went 5 in 24, 5 and 25. That this group is going to be smaller. I could see it be around 3, and Simpson, you get him, then potentially Ben Novak. Then you're maybe looking for just one true tackle. I don't want to make it seem like Simpson's recruitment is in the bag for Wisconsin, because Iowa is right there for him. But he's a guy to expect there. You look at the state of Illinois, Gavin Mueller, the tight end, maybe their top tight end on their board. Zachary Washington, the receiver, he's arguably one of their top wide receivers on their board. Obviously they want to get him around Jordan Reid and get him familiar with that. It's good to have Kenny Guiton still on staff, because that was lead contact there. King Liggins is another Illinois kid, the defensive tackle. He's one of probably their top defensive tackle targets. Nazir Rankin, probably an athlete right now, but I think he probably projects best to wide receiver. So I think that you're not necessarily looking local, but probably those Midwest guys are going to be guys who show up, and then maybe a kind of a sprinkling into some national guys as well. So, usually those are 12 to 16-ish kids that they're going to get up there, but they're ultra high priority guys. This isn't like a game day where you're like, hey, let's get 60 kids here and, just have them sit out in Camp Randall for a while. I mean, this is intentional, high-level guys that they're trying to be there. And if you look back at the last couple junior days, the guys that have been there, like I said, a good chunk of them they've been able to close on, because these are guys that they put a lot of work into. And, the guys that step foot for these junior days, you can be assured that they're top targets for Wisconsin, either in that 26, or sometimes they'll bring up a 27 kid as well, just to kind of get the process going with them too.
So Jaron Mock is still committed for 26 at quarterback. I think that's obviously, people want to talk about quarterbacks because it is the most important position on the field. Under Longo at the end, it felt like they were looking at potentially taking 2 quarterbacks in this class. Where does the quarterback class stand in 26 heading into junior days?
I think it's got to be 2. I like Mock in a class of 2. I wouldn't want Mock in a class of 1. And look, that's going to be up for Jeff Grimes to kind of pour over that junior tape for him. Kenny Guiton to put his insight and look over that junior tape. He's a guy that as another option in a 2 quarterback class, I like. And I would probably make an effort. Again, I don't get paid to do this, and Wisconsin doesn't want my opinion. But in a 2 quarterback class, I'd like to hang on to Jaron Mock and then try to swing for the fences on a national target. We did a story, right when Kenny Guiton took over, who could be some options for Wisconsin. And you've seen with some coaching transition that there's not going to be a drop off because there are those relationships with Max and Pat in that recruiting department. So I think some of the guys like, Ryan Hopkins from California made it up there in the fall. He could still be an option. That Peyton Falzone, even though I think Penn State's kind of turning up the heat on him. So this doesn't necessarily have to be a complete reset. Because I think they can go after some of the guys that they've been previously on. I was looking at Kansas's offers at the quarterback position, and I think it was like 8 out of 10 had already committed to other schools. And that kind of just, shows how quickly that position is. It's kind of an accelerated process with quarterbacks where they get things done a little bit earlier. So there isn't a guy that maybe you could point to as hey, Grimes will bring this guy over from his recruiting board unless he wants to go after a kid that's currently committed to another school. So I expect some new names to get there. But like I said, I think this has to be a 2 quarterback class. And I think that if you can make it work with a guy like Jaron Mock and still go after another target, that might be the best thing for Wisconsin moving forward. Because look, they're going to be behind, even though signing day just happened. Stuff with quarterbacks moves so early that they're kind of getting in late if they want to start cracking at some of the top signal callers in the country. They have a better shot at doing that in 2027 and beyond. As crazy as it sounds, I know that I get that signing day was less than a month ago.
Time moves fast here in the recruiting world. But you can keep up with everything happening on BadgerBlitz.com. Make sure to sign up. Check us out in the Badgers Den, the best message boards anywhere around. We appreciate everyone tuning here to Badger Blitz TV. Make sure to subscribe, like, rate, review, all that good stuff. You know how to do it already. Until next time, he's John McNamara. I'm Matt Perkins, and we'll see you in the Den.